All right, well, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you got there?
Yeah, so I just found this in my grandpa's attic, and I thought it looked pretty nice, so I wanted to bring it in to be assessed.
Huh. Yeah, I see. Well, I have some good news for you.
Oh, yeah?
This looks to be like a genuine vintage episode of the Daily Solutions podcast. I'd say a Tuesday or perhaps a Wednesday release. You can tell it's authentic by the custom intro that each episode has, and by the way the hosts bumble their way through whatever question is asked.
Wow, well, that's really exciting news. How much do you think it's worth?
You, my friend, are about to be a very rich man. All right, welcome to the podcast, everyone.
Hey there, I'm Graham.
I'm Ashkan.
And today's question is, I'm about to open a float center, and my health department says that I need to have a UL field inspection on my electrical equipment. Is this bad news? Is it going to stop me from opening?
Yeah, that does happen.
I mean, it's kind of bad news in the sense that you'll have to pay a little more money.
It costs money.
It costs money.
Yeah, let's before we fully answer your question, dear listener, let's establish a few pieces of information, like what is the UL? Yeah.
Yep.
So UL is the Underwriters Laboratory, and that's not a government organization. It's I think it's a not-for-profit. I don't think it's a nonprofit. I think it's specifically a not-for-profit. I think they lost their nonprofit status at some point in the 50s or 60s or something like that. And so anyway, it's an organization that's not a government body that specifically certifies products for electrical safety. That's their shtick. So they take different products in all sorts of different categories. Batteries, electrical components for lighting, for pool and spa equipment, for cars. It's a bunch of stuff that gets, you've probably seen it, their little UL logo on various different things around, and they're pretty big and they're pretty widely known and have been around for a long time and decently respected as people who can certify things to electrical safety. So there's a lot of different certifications for things out there, and they've even recently been working on the path towards actually having a kind of float tank certification. There's a float tank out there that has been UL certified, maybe more than one, and they have kind of a certain certification they think would be best suited for float tanks. They might adjust a little bit as you bring a float tank through that process. And this is not exactly that. What you're being asked to do is not to get your entire float tank UL certified. What you're being asked to is to have probably the actual electrical components in the brain or control system of the float tank have someone UL check that specific area of it and give you a little stamp that says it's good to go.
Yeah, and that can be required for a couple of reasons, right? So there's either the float tank you got was not actually UL certified by the manufacturer, so they didn't have someone come in and at the manufacturing level kind of say that everything that is produced that has this configuration is UL certified. And if you do, then you wouldn't be asked for this. You'd kind of give them your UL certificate from the manufacturer, and the health department would be happy, right? And so then a field evaluation, which is where, like Ashkan said, they come out and actually just check your float tank in the field, or maybe prior to actually being set up in your center.
And it might not even be the UL themselves coming out. I think other organizations or even electricians can, test things to a certain protocol, and that'll be the kind of UL test.
Yep. So that and the field evaluation again is required when either it wasn't certified or it went through changes. So even if you at one point, or if you got a float tank that at one point was UL certified, but now they've changed out a bunch of the electrical components and they're using new machinery, you might still be required to have a field evaluation.
And that's going to cost money, but probably not an insane amount of money. This would probably cost you a few $1,000s.
Yeah.
To have someone come out and go through this process with you.
My guess would be somewhere between 2 and 5 is kind of the range that I've heard.
And I've heard float centers going through this, and most of the time they don't really need to make adjustments. They can just the float tanks are already kind of built to a spec that passes those requirements. So it really mostly is just the cost of having someone come in and kind of validate all that rather than like having to change a bunch of stuff.
And it's often per unit, which is kind of unfortunate. Even for identical units, that several $1,000s is likely going to be per float tank that you actually have on site. So it can add up for a larger center, which is a little unfortunate. But I mean, the good news is they're requiring this for a reason, right? Which is they just want to make sure like you have a ton of salt water sitting there, and they want to make sure that people are safe in it around a bunch of electrical equipment, right? It's almost a very understandable concern and logic behind requiring this field evaluation to happen.
And it's just generally a wet environment. Like the shower and the filtration system, all that stuff can leak salt water. Like it's not a bad idea to have an eye towards electrical safety.
Yep, and this could happen on the state level or the county level that your health department could be requiring this. So if you know, for instance, just that other float tanks in your state have not had to be field evaluated, you'll still want to check with your county, just like everything for health department regulations.
And I guess maybe the other thing to say is sometimes there may be some flexibility in here. Like, you might be able to talk to your health department and say, hey, would it be okay if I had like an electrician come and just write off on this and do an inspection and like, give it their stamp of approval. And that might be something that they like. They're like, okay, yeah, if you get like an actual licensed electrician to come and evaluate the system and approve it like that, that'll satisfy what we're looking for. So there might be some flexibility in if you talk to your health department.
Yep, or there might be no flexibility.
Or there might be no
They just put their foot down. But
Yeah.
you never know until you ask.
Yeah.
And I mean, that is one of the fortunate parts about being in an industry that is a little more Wild Westy, is that you can sometimes negotiate like this. Oftentimes there's not actually a law in place that says float tanks have to be treated in this exact way. So
Right.
talking to and finding out, or talking to your health department officials and finding out what makes them comfortable is sometimes, an easier way than just going straight to spending thousands of dollars. And I think that's about it.
Yeah.
Short episode today. And I guess as a little side story, this can even change from time to time within the same area. So when we were just getting started up, we bought some used float tanks from down in Southern Oregon, our 2 used ocean float rooms that we started with, of which we still have one in our center that actually has a UL field evaluation metal kind of sticker, metal, not plaque, what's the word for that? Stamp, something, whatever. Anyway, you get the idea. It's like a metal thing. It's on the side of it that says I've been field evaluated. And now if you're opening up in Oregon, you would not have to have that done. But in order for the float center that we got those tanks from to even be open for business, they required them to be field evaluated. And as a result, one of the tanks in our center has a field evaluation stamp.
Mm-hmm. Cool. All right. Well, if you guys have other questions, you can hop over to floatanksolutions.com/podcast and send them our way.
Yep. And we'll talk to you tomorrow.
Have a good one.
Bye, everyone.